Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to present a hypothesis about the US-Iran war, and I'm going to back that hypothesis with 5 pieces of evidence. So here is the hypothesis. The US military does not want to fight a war with Iran, whereas the US political leadership wants to force the US military into fighting this war. Now, let me back it with some solid pieces of evidence. The first piece of evidence is the forced retirement or firing of about 24 top US military generals by Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth in the last few months. Some notable names among them are General Randy George, who was the US Army Joint Chief of Staff, who was fired last month. Then Lieutenant General, I think US Navy Secretary John Phelan, who was fired probably when he resisted the naval blockade, the plan of naval blockade. He was fired last month. Then Jeffrey Cruz, Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz with the Defense Intelligence Agency. So these are some of the top military generals who were fired in the last month. And when these people are fired, and these are not just three, there are about 24 of them. So when these people are fired, when these generals and commanders are fired, what effect do you think it has on the morale of the men and the boys who are fighting among them? Obviously, they get demotivated. They see this as a humiliation of their commander, and they and they lose motivation to fight the war, right? So that's the first piece of evidence, which shows a rift between the military leadership and the political leadership in America. The second piece of evidence that I would like to cite is the conscientious objector status, a massive surge in conscientious objector status. What is it? So see, under the US military law, if as an active serviceman you believe that a war is unjust, immoral, against religious beliefs, then you have the right to file an application objecting to that war, and you may be allowed to withdraw from combat. There has been a 1000% increase in such applications following the American strike on Iran. And most of the people have cited the US attack on the girls' school in Minab, which killed 160 girl children, as the breaking point. Also, US military veterans did gather and resisted and protested against this war in Washington, D.C. at the Cannon House, and they were all arrested. So this is the second piece of evidence, this sharp rise in conscientious objector status and protest by the US military veterans. The third piece of evidence I would like to suggest is the leaks coming out of the Pentagon and military leadership. Now, we have seen a massive surge in the reports coming out now, which are establishing this fact that the US government downplayed the damages caused by the Iran's strikes on the US military bases in the Persian Gulf region. Now, how do you think the news portals are getting their hands on these reports and these data? Of course, someone is leaking it to them, and I'm of the opinion that these data are being leaked by top military officials in order to discourage the government from going into another round of war with Iran. The fourth piece of evidence that I would like to quote is essentially a correlation. In the last 10 years, there has been a dramatic shift in how the young Americans view Israel and Palestine issue. In 2016, about 53% of young Americans had a favorable view about Israel, whereas about 26% of them, only 26% of them had a favorable view about Palestine. In 2026, that trend has essentially reversed. Now, more than 60% view Israel unfavorably, and about 26, there are only 26%, 23% who view Israel favorably. So, and most of them actually empathize now with the Palestinian cause. So the US military is not a body that exists in vacuum. It's a cohort of men and boys that comes from that same young American group, right? So it is very natural for them to share the similar kind of opinion, right? So that's the fourth piece of evidence. And the fifth piece of evidence that I would like to cite is the soft sabotage activities that the very smart US military men have probably done. Now, this is an alternative explanation of events that have occurred in the last 1 year. When the US military was fighting the Houthis in the Mediterranean, I remember there were reports of US fighter aircraft, the F-A-18E Super Hornets, falling off from the deck of USS Harry S. Truman. Now, that's very unlikely. Doesn't happen at all. But two fighter jets actually fell off the deck of US aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman. Was that a soft indication that we do not want to fight this war? We do not know. There were weird reasons that were quoted. They said that the aircraft carrier was trying to take a very sharp turn in order to evade an incoming missile or a drone, and that led to the falling of the fighter jets. I don't buy that. This year, when the US had launched its war on Iran, on board another aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, there were reports about massive choking of toilets because these guys, the military men, the very smart military men, were flushing their t-shirts and socks and mop heads into the vacuum toilets in order to pull the US Gerald R. Ford out of the combat field. There were also reports of a massive laundry fire that raged for about 30 hours, because of which eventually the US Gerald R. Ford had to be pulled out of service. So they are doing these soft sabotage activities in order to discourage the US government from participating in this war. These are very clear signs of the military leadership unwilling to fight this war, whereas the political leadership under Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth is more than itching to fight this war, right? So the legacy media and Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, they all like to portray as if there's a massive rift somehow between the Iranian leadership. Now, I do not deny that there must be differences of opinion, but they are more cohesive at this moment. And I see a greater rift between the American military leadership and the American political leadership, where the former is cold, calculative, and logical, and doesn't want to fight this war, whereas the latter, the American political leadership, is completely beholden to Israeli interest and is putting America second. Thank you.